Are you seeing the same thing I am? Are you seeing this? What is the rabbi doing with his hair? What is that, a palm thief or a pomponnet? I think it's called a midlife crisis. Why didn't he just buy a Porsche? I think the hair is cheaper. You sure about that? Looks like he's lost a little bit of weight. I liked him better when he was heavier. Do you think he's sick? No. I read that he's got a worm. What? Yeah, it was in those AA Brotherhood emails. You know the AA Brotherhood. They get together, they have snacks, they meet at somebody's house, they drink, and so, he got a worm from the tequila. What? They put this all in an email? No. It was implied. Look, one of the vice presidents of the congregation owns a tequila company, and everybody knows that high-end tequila is a worm floating in the bottom of the tequila. And so, they're there. He's the rabbi, so they let him eat the worm. The rabbi's not going to eat the worm. It's not even kosher. No. The worm's been in there for a long time. It's pickled, so it's okay. I don't think that's the way it works. Anyway, the rabbi is a vegetarian. He's not going to eat a worm. I heard he was a vegan. A vegan? What's a vegan? Well, a vegan. From that book, Women Are From Mars, Men Are From Vegan. Oh, yeah, it was a good book. This is going on for a while. Do you think he's ever going to start his sermon? I don't know. Maybe we should stop talking and listen. How am I going to listen if I stop talking? Shana Tova, my friends. I appreciate the opportunity to front load a little bit of humor into the beginning of my sermon, because you will see very quickly that what I have to say to you has not much humor in it. It has been a brutal, brutal year. We have been through wars with Israel before. We have seen a rise in anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment. But my friends, what we have gone through this last year could easily be called the trauma of our lifetime. October 7th, the rape, the terror, and the slaughter of 1,200 Israelis. 250 dragged in to terror tunnels, into, like a Greek myth, into the bowels of hell. 100 of them are still there to this day. The ensuing war that followed, upwards of 40,000 Palestinians dead. The Houthis, Hezbollah, and now Iran just 2 days ago, all on attack of Israel. All of that has washed us through a spin cycle of emotions. Fear, terror, fury, grieving, mourning, and anger. And then we wake up the next day and we go through it all again and again. Just this last week, through all of that. It has been brutal. The anti-Semitism and anti-Israel protest and violence has been on an uptick. It hasn't been this high in decades. And now, anti-Semitism has become mainstream. You could say it, post it, tweet or exit, vile words that we haven't heard since the 1930s Nazi Germany. And now they just get retweeted rather than condemned. They become viral rather than quarantined. They get held up as an interesting point rather than pointed out as evil. Just a day after October 7th, as Hezbollah is launching missiles into the north of Israel, letters started circulating blaming Israel for the violence, blaming Israel for those attacks. Jews who had been part in this country of social movements and civil society had been pushed out, told that they do not belong, that they shouldn't be there anymore. Children from middle school all the way through college were identified as people, main actors in crimes against humanity. It has been a brutal year. And even more painful than all that has been the invisible cloak that just has been covered up, that we have been covered up with. Our pain, our suffering, our sorrow doesn't seem to matter anymore. Our safety is not of anybody's concern. This was made painfully obvious when university deans were asked the question, and they said they needed context before they could condemn. It has been a brutal year. And has left us with a heaviness. What will become of the hostages? Will they ever see and be able to hold their families again? Will this war ever end? Will there ever be able to be peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians after this year of bloodshed and war? Will Israel survive an all-out assault from Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and anybody else who wants to just pile on? And all that heaviness is before we ever turn and look at ourselves. Look at what is happening here in the United States. Is our safety, our security, does it have a place anymore in this country? We have prospered as a people for the last 100 years, had an outstanding cultural, spiritual renaissance that we have lived through. And the question is that over? The Atlantic article in April published an article by Franklin Foer entitled, "The Golden Age of the American Jew is Ending." He posits, among other things, that with the death spiral of liberalism, Jews are now finding themselves in much more of a precarious place. After he shares the fate of other civilizations throughout history that have exiled and expelled their Jews, and the fate of those civilizations after doing so, he makes a chilling prophecy. He says that if America continues on its course, then the golden age will be ending, not just for the Jews, but for the country that nurtured them. This is a chilling prophecy. This strikes at both of my identities, my Jewish and my American identity. Is this it? Is it truly ending? You know what that means for us, right? We pack up our things and leave. Be a student of Jewish history. That's what it looks like for us. We pack up and we leave. Our ancestors did it. Dare I say, will our grandchildren, will our children, and heaven forfend, would ourselves need to pack up and leave this place we call home. I take a modicum of comfort from the words of the Talmud, Sanhedrin 11a, when it says that the sages state that with the death of the last prophets of Israel, Malachi, Zechariah, and Haggai, the Ruach HaKodesh that gave those prophets prophecy left Israel, and now Israel depends on listening closely to the Bat Kol. There is no more prophecy, my friends, in our existence. We must learn from our history, and with that history, we make wise choices for our future. Something, by the way, that we Jews are excellent at doing. So what is our history? The Second Temple stood 2,500 years ago. With the conquest of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, this savage king burned down our temple in Jerusalem, raped and exiled our people, murdered tens of thousands, and our leaders found themselves in a strange, distant land. After 70 years, Babylonia was conquered by the Persians, and the benevolent King Cyrus let the Jews come back. This is in our Bible, by the way, this whole story. They let the Jews come back, led by Ezra and Nehemiah, and they rebuilt Jerusalem. Hundreds of years passed, and we toggled between self-sovereignty and a vassal state. And all that came to an end with the wicked hand of the Romans, who under Emperor Titus ended our sovereignty in the land of Israel in 70 of the Common Era, just under 2,000 years ago. And we ended up wandering for these last 2,000 years, looking for a benevolent land, a benevolent king, who would allow us to enter into a golden age, and then, as always, the wind would change, and we would pack up our things, and we would move on again. My friends, is history repeating itself? As I said, there is no prophecy. And so I am hopeful. Although those markers and signs might be here, the truth is there may be other options. Because this time in history is unlike any history that the Jews have ever lived throughout our long and winding road. With the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 of the Common Era, something emerged like a phoenix out of the fire. It was called Rabbinic Judaism. Before this, the Jews practiced biblical Judaism. 3 times a year, they would make pilgrimage to Jerusalem. They would bring their crops and their goats. They would offer it to the priest. The kings and the prophets would spar with one another about who is most righteous. The priests would learn the Torah. They would learn the sacrifices. They would offer your sin or your shlamim or your thanksgiving offering. You would eat and then you would go home. That was Judaism in the time of the Bible. After the destruction of the Second Temple, something amazing happened. They were called the rabbis, the sages, and they created a new type of Judaism. No longer was it the king or the prophet or the priest that held the wisdom of Torah. Now it was incumbent upon all of us, all Jews everywhere, to be scholars and lovers of Torah. V'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech b'shochbecha uvkumecha. The Shema, our central prayer in the morning and the night, teaches us. We will teach these words diligently to our children. We will repeat them. We will say them when we are sitting in our homes and when we are going on our way. We will recite them when we are getting up and when we are lying down. The rabbis democratized Judaism. They were democratized Torah. They gave it to all the people, and it was incumbent upon us to learn it, to love it, to live by its ways. And today, my friend, there are 2 places in this world where that happens. Among the Jews in Israel and the Jews of the diaspora. That Torah is lived. It is loved. And be mindful. Those two things never lived together at the same time. Remember, Israel lost its sovereignty before Rabbinic Judaism emerged. This is a whole new era that we've never experienced before. Never before has our Torah and Rabbinic Judaism and the state of Israel lived together. Never before have they evolved together. Have they grown with one another? Have they conflicted like this with each other? This is an era like never before. And what's happened over this year in all the darkness and in all the pain and suffering is something amazing. Our Torah came alive. Our Torah came alive in the midst of this darkness and this death and destruction. Pidyon HaShevuim, redemption of the captive, became slogans, became signs, became chants, became directive, in which people in Tel Aviv and here in America shouted from the rooftops, "Free our captives," a law from the Torah. Pekuach nefesh, take every measure to save a life, was embodied by the work of the IDF, the work of Israel, the work of the Jews here. Kol Yisrael Aravim zeh bazeh. Each and every Israelite, each and every Jew is responsible for one another. Our Torah, my friends, came alive over this last year. And it is leading us to somewhere. It is taking us to a new place. And although people will come up and say that they are prophets, I encourage you not to believe them. Because the future has not been charted, because we've never been here before. And unlike the past, when we sought benevolent kings, we no longer look to them for what our future will look like, for whether or not we will have a golden age again, or whether or not they will cause the end of our golden age. We no longer look to governments and parliaments. We no longer look to kings and queens. We no longer look to nations united or unions European for our lot and our fate in life. We now have Torah manifested in our soul, and we have a state of Israel like never before. And so the question is, what do we do with this new reality? The responsibility for our future, for our golden age, is no longer in anybody else's hands. It's in our hands. So what are you going to do with that responsibility? What are you going to make of it? Because there's nobody else who's going to come and do it for us. So my friends, I have some suggestions for you. Take what you want, leave what you don't, or make up your own. But the Jewish future and our golden age is in our hands. Firstly, if you have the means, go to Israel. Go to Israel. Be with the Jews. Bear witness to what happened there and what is happening there. Share your love and your kindness. Eat in the corner cafes. Buy knickknacks on the tayelets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Show them that they are not alone, and show them that we see and are there for them. Number 2, live your Judaism loud and proud. Live it out. No more are the days in which we will lower our voice when we talk about the Jew, about being Jewish. You wear those Hanukkah socks. You wear that ugly Hanukkah sweater. You make up your cubicle at work for Purim. You eat that matzah in the break room. You invite people over to your home for Shabbat dinner and holiday meals. The only people that find bat mitzvahs and Passover seders boring are the Jews. The non-Jews love them. They love it. And they will be honored to sit at your table, to give a fountain pen to your child. Live proud and show it. Number 3, we've got to reach out to the non-Jewish community. My friends, the non-Jewish community is being attacked themselves. There is a race for the heart and soul of the non-Jew. And who's going to get to them first? Us or the bigots, the racists, the anti-Semites? They're gunning for them. They're going for their minds, their hearts. They're leaving pamphlets. They're leaving pamphlets on the driveways of their homes. They're projecting words on the side of stadiums. They are protesting outside of our synagogues here in Georgia. Are we going to leave them to the bigots? Or are we going to get to them ourselves and show them what Jewish love and Jewish values really mean? And my friends, we are wasting too much time pining over the people who don't like us when there is a world out there of people who love us, who are curious about us, who want to know what is going on with us. Last year, we had our Interfaith Thanksgiving service. We've been doing this for decades here, much longer than I've been here. It just happened to fall last year to be at AA Synagogue rather than one of the neighboring churches. This room was almost full. It was the largest crowd I've ever seen at that Thanksgiving service. The Christians came out to make sure we were okay. My inbox was flooded after October 7th with calls, people I didn't know, telling me about their praying in their church group. They're going to go tell their reverend and their pastor and their imam. They're going to go tell them that they got to help us. It was amazing. And instead, we're focusing on the people who don't like us. Stop. Focus on the people who we could make a difference in their lives. And by the way, we must work to make a difference in their life. I heard so often the upset about where were different communities that we marched with, we were part of, as if there is a tit for tat for doing justice. There is no tit for tat. You do what is right because it is right. You do what is right because God told you to. That's why you do it. And if people have turned their back on us, then there is so many more people in the world who need our help, who will welcome us with open arms to help them in their cause. And we better show up. We better show up because God tells us to. God tells us to, no other reason. And we make those bridges and we make those connections. November 24th, St. Anne's Episcopal Church, Sunday, 4 o'clock. Where are you going to be? I know you don't have anything on your calendar for that Sunday afternoon. Sunday, November 24th, 4 o'clock, St. Anne's Episcopal Church on Moores Mill Drive is the next Interfaith Thanksgiving service. Be there, come in force, and make a connection. Go to Israel. Live loud and proud. Connect with the Jews, the Muslims, the Hindus, the Muslims, the Christians, the Asians, the blacks, the whites, the browns, everybody who you come in contact with, and show them what it means, what Jewish love really means. Don't let someone else speak for us. Number 4, we need to stop saying that there are no partners for peace in Israel. We need to stop saying it because it's not true. It's not true. Yes, Hamas is not a partner for peace. Hezbollah is not a partner for peace. Iran is not a partner for peace. But what we saw with the attacks of Iran, not just 2 days ago, but back in April, were not just the usual suspects who came to our aid, but 2 Arab countries that stood up for Israel, Jordan and Saudi Arabia. That has never happened in the history of Israel. With the Abraham Accords that came out a few years ago, countries are now making connections with Israel. Bahrain, Morocco, the UAE. There's an organization, Shakara, which means in Arabic partnership, that grew out of the Abraham Accords, that is bringing Arabs to Israel to bust open the myths and the prejudices. The Israeli consulate just brought Shakara to Atlanta just last week because they are on a college speaking tour to share what they are learning, what they are experiencing, and the connections that the Arab countries and Jews are making with one another. And there are more countries in that region to make peace with. But they're also among the Palestinians, among the Israeli Arabs as well. Givat Haviva, this incredible organization in Israel proper, that is creating a community that models Palestinian and Israeli, Jew and Arab civil society with one another. It is an amazing organization. And Givat Haviva, their executive director, Michal Sela, and their director of programming, Mohammed Darwashi, are going to be here at the AA October 29th, Tuesday night. And they're going to share with us how they are building bridges, how they are making peace in Israel, even amongst this terrible conflict. So be here on Tuesday, October 29th, and hear what they have to say. In the West Bank, you have organizations called Roots, which are bringing together Jewish settlers and Palestinians to understand, to speak to each other about why that piece of property is so important to all of them. And they are becoming brothers and sisters with one another. It is absolutely incredible. In the Negev, Khalil al-Baz, the imam of the Tel Sheva Masjid in the Negev desert outside of Beersheba, created the Abraham Reunion, an organization that brings together Palestinians and Israelis, Arabs and Jews, for coexistence, for understanding one another, and figuring out how to make their way out of this great darkness. There are partners for peace, but we're listening to the wrong ones. We need to elevate the voices of the people who are truly working for coexistence, for love, and for caring for one another. Go to Israel. Live loud and proud. Make connections with the non-Jewish world. Raise up the voice of people who are truly working for peace. And then finally, my friends, I know I'm not supposed to, but I got to talk about the election. I know I'm not supposed to. But what you don't know is that every 5 years, the WZO, the World Zionist Congress, holds an election. And I need you to vote in that election. The WZO controls over $1 billion of Israel's domestic budget. $1 billion. And those who hold seats, the most seats in that parliament, get to control where that money is allocated. Initiatives, organizations, communities in Israel. And depending on which political group is in power will depend how those values are actualized in real money in Israel. Now, of course, you might say, well, Rabbi, I can't vote. I know how democracy works. I need to make aliyah, and I'm not going to do that. And I need to make aliyah, and then I vote. Well, yes, that works if you want to make change in Italy, or if you want to make change in Guatemala, or in the United States. But why would you ever assume that Israel is like any other democracy? Since the beginning of its creation, the WZO, the World Zionist Congress, has had a deep connection with the diaspora Jewish community. It is written into the Code of Israel that Jews everywhere in the world are to vote in that election. The election is February and March of 2025, 5 months away. Out in the lobby and on your seat for Yom Kippur, you will be getting a postcard which tells you how to vote and gives you a community code that lets us be able to track you to make sure that you're doing what I just told you to do. We can make change. Here, we can make change in Israel. It is our responsibility to do so. It's a scary time, my friends. And people are predicting that this is the beginning of the end for our golden era. And I am heartened to know that there are no prophets. And this day and age is like no other the Jews have ever lived through before. The power is now in our hands, like we've never had. We could bring our Torah to life by living its values. We could make change in Israel, and we could bring peace to that region and to our own country and to the whole world. Im tirtzu ein zo agada. If you will it, it will not be a myth. Am Yisrael Chai, Shana Tova.